Imagine standing in a crowded hospital room, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the air thick with the scent of antiseptic and sweat. Across from you sits a man in his 30s, shoulders slumped, eyes haunted, not because of the injuries he sustained in combat, but because of the betrayal he never saw coming. This man is one of the 2,000 veterans who put their trust, their hope, and, in some cases, their life savings into a cause led by a royal couple the world admires. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. And now, years later, that trust has become the foundation for a lawsuit that could shake not only the couple, but the entire Invictus Games legacy. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. You might be asking yourself, how did it come to this? How did the Invictus Games, a celebration of resilience and recovery, turn into a courtroom battlefield? And most importantly, could Harry and Meghan really face the public reckoning that seems to be finally catching up with them? It all began with what seemed like the perfect story. A prince who had served in combat himself, a duchess with charisma, connections, and a seemingly endless network of global influence, and a mission to empower wounded veterans through sport. The narrative was flawless. Media outlets painted the image of a royal couple deeply committed to healing through athleticism. The world cheered. The veterans believed. Donations poured in, sponsorships skyrocketed, and an image of generosity and goodwill was cemented. But behind the velvet ropes and smiling photo ops, cracks were forming. Veterans started noticing inconsistencies. Funds that were promised for prosthetics, therapy programs, and training facilities were either delayed or never appeared. Sponsorship money meant to directly support athletes seemed to vanish into mysterious channels. Questions were raised quietly at first, whispers among staff, a few anxious emails that went unanswered, but soon, it became undeniable. Something was off, something serious. And that's when the tipping point arrived. Veterans who had given their all, who had risked their lives for their country, realized they weren't just being ignored. They were being shortchanged. The realization was devastating. They weren't just participants in a sporting event anymore. They were stakeholders in a billion-dollar brand, and they had been sidelined. This isn't just a story about money. It's about betrayal. It's about the gap between what's promised and what's delivered, between public image and private action. It's about a group of people who believed in someone's word, only to find themselves forced to fight for that word in court. And now, with the 2027 Invictus Games fast approaching in the United Kingdom, the stakes could not be higher. Not for the veterans, not for the public, and certainly not for Harry and Meghan. Consider this. Every major decision the couple made, every sponsorship signed, every donor thanked publicly, could be scrutinized under the harsh light of legal examination. Every promise, every press release, every Instagram post could be dissected and weighed against cold, hard financial records. The royal image, carefully curated over years, faces a challenge unlike anything before. A lawsuit from the very people they claim to serve. So why does this matter now? Why not last year, or the year before? The answer is simple but shocking. Timing is everything. The 2027 Invictus Games in the UK are set to be the largest and most high-profile iteration yet. Thousands of athletes, families, and media personnel from around the world will descend on the event. Every sponsor, every financial backer, every member of the public will be watching. And the lawsuit isn't just about money. It's about accountability. It's about proving that no one, not even royals, are above scrutiny when public trust is breached. But even before the legal battle hit headlines, there were signs. Leaked emails hinting at mismanaged funds. Confidential documents suggesting that certain donations were rerouted or delayed. Whistleblowers quietly sharing their accounts with journalists. And a growing chorus of veterans speaking out, frustrated, angry, and desperate for transparency. All of this created a powder keg, ready to explode. And explode it did. The public reaction has been intense. Social media platforms have become battlegrounds. Hashtags trending in minutes. Memes mocking the situation circulating globally. Fans of the couple divided. Some defending them with blind loyalty, others calling for accountability and refunds. Even casual observers. People who had never paid attention to Invictus Games before are now invested in every development, every court date, every leaked document. The world is watching, and the world has opinions. But here's the thing. The full story is far worse than anyone imagined. Beneath the surface of financial mismanagement lies something deeper, a story of miscommunication, hidden agendas, and what some insiders are calling deliberate negligence. And while Harry and Meghan may have thought these issues could be managed quietly, the veterans were ready to act. They weren't going to wait for press releases, for spin, or for royal apologies. They were going to take the fight directly to court. You might be wondering how this could escalate to a full-blown lawsuit. After all, this is royalty we're talking about. Aren't they untouchable? The reality is more complex. Lawsuits against high-profile figures are notoriously tricky. The legal team must navigate layers of immunity, precedent, and public opinion. But veterans, supported by expert legal counsel, are moving forward with precision, determined not to let procedural hurdles stop them. They are not only seeking reimbursement of allegedly misused funds, but also demanding accountability, clarity, and, in some cases, public acknowledgement of the mismanagement that has affected their lives so profoundly. And yet, despite the gravity of the situation, there are moments that defy belief. Internal communications suggest that certain royal aides were aware of funding discrepancies long before the public or veterans learned of them. Some documents indicate that questions were deliberately left unanswered, and potential red flags were quietly ignored. The deeper you dig, the more it becomes clear that the stakes are not just financial. They are reputational, emotional, and, for many, deeply personal. So what exactly is at risk? The 2027 Invictus Games themselves could be imperiled. Sponsors may reconsider participation. Athletes may withdraw. Public confidence in the entire event could collapse. And for Harry and Meghan, this isn't just about money. It's about credibility, trust, and the legacy they leave behind. A misstep here could undo years of carefully built public image. And yet, despite all this, there's an even more shocking element waiting just below the surface. Evidence has emerged, emails, financial statements, internal memos, that suggest the situation may involve far more than simple oversight. Some veterans claim that money intended to directly support them was rerouted to projects or initiatives personally overseen by the couple. Others suggest that certain donations were diverted entirely, raising questions about motive and intent. The implications are staggering. And while we are just scratching the surface in public reporting, the documents paint a picture that could alter public perception forever. The emotional impact on veterans cannot be overstated. These are individuals who have risked life and limb, who have endured pain, injury, and trauma, all for the sake of service. To feel betrayed by the very figures they trusted, figures who publicly championed their cause, is more than a financial grievance. It is a deep, personal wound. Families of veterans report sleepless nights, anxiety, and feelings of helplessness. Some have taken to speaking out publicly, sharing stories that range from frustration with missing funds to heartbreak over abandoned therapy programs. Their voices form the backbone of this lawsuit and give the legal case a human face that no spreadsheet or contract clause can diminish. And as the 2027 Invictus Games approach, the tension is palpable. Behind the scenes, lawyers are preparing for what promises to be a high-stakes courtroom showdown. Public relations teams are bracing for a media storm. Veterans are rallying their support, not just for themselves, but for the principle of accountability. And amidst it all, Harry and Meghan remain at the center, navigating a maelstrom that could define their legacy for years to come. So what comes next? How will this unfold? Who will emerge victorious? And who will face consequences that extend far beyond financial restitution? The answers remain unclear, but one thing is certain. This isn't just a story about money, or royalty, or sport. It's a story about trust, betrayal, and the extraordinary lengths ordinary people will go to defend both. And while some details are still emerging, one fact is undeniable. What happens next could reshape not only the Invictus Games, but also the public's perception of one of the most scrutinized royal couples in modern history. And behind closed doors, there are documents, emails, and communications that could make everything you think you know about this scandal look tame by comparison. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. It started with an email. A single, seemingly harmless line in a crowded inbox buried under dozens of other messages, unnoticed by most. But for James, a veteran of multiple deployments and a man who had survived more danger in his life than most people could imagine, it hit like a punch to the gut. The email was from the Invictus Games administration, confirming that funds earmarked for adaptive sports equipment were delayed indefinitely. No explanation, no apology, just a cold, bureaucratic notice. How does that happen? How do the people who promised to support you when you were broken, when you were struggling, fail you at the exact moment you need them the most? James was furious, and he wasn't alone. Across the country, other veterans began noticing the same pattern. Equipment purchases delayed, training programs postponed, sponsorship funds accounted for in reports but absent in reality. At first, many tried to shrug it off. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the pandemic caused delays. Maybe someone simply miscalculated. But the pattern was too consistent to ignore. This was more than money. It was trust. Every veteran involved had placed their faith in Harry and Meghan, not just because of the glamour of royalty, but because they believed in the couple's message. They believed in the promise that the Invictus Games were more than just a sporting event. They were a lifeline, a chance to heal, a chance to reclaim purpose after life-changing injuries. And now, that lifeline was fraying. Emails began circulating among the veterans. WhatsApp groups buzzed with messages. Has anyone else had this problem? Where did the funds go? This isn't right. Conversations that had started as casual complaints turned into serious discussions. They realized something astonishing. They weren't just isolated cases. They were part of a much bigger issue, one that seemed to implicate the very top of the organization. And then the whispers began. Staff members who had once praised the royal couple began quietly questioning decisions in private. One former aide, speaking under strict anonymity, described meetings where budgetary issues were downplayed, where inconvenient questions were redirected or ignored. It was like there was a script we weren't allowed to read, the aide said. Every time we raised concerns, the response was the same: don't rock the boat. What was happening behind closed doors? That question gnawed at every veteran, every supporter, and eventually, it gnawed at the lawyers who were being quietly consulted. Soon, it became clear, this wasn't just mismanagement. According to multiple sources, there were deliberate decisions to delay or redirect funds. Some donations intended for rehabilitation programs were allegedly rerouted to initiatives directly controlled by Harry and Meghan, or to projects with vague reporting requirements. The implications were staggering. Imagine surviving war only to be betrayed by the very figurehead meant to champion your cause. Imagine placing faith in a person who the world celebrates, only to find that faith abused. It was a betrayal that cut deeper than any battlefield injury. And that's when a decision was made that would change everything. The veterans would fight back. The lawsuit wasn't about vengeance. It was about accountability. It was about ensuring that funds promised to vulnerable, recovering athletes actually reached them. It was about protecting the integrity of a brand that had, until now, been untouchable in the public eye. Lawyers began drafting claims, detailing each incident of alleged fund mismanagement. Every delayed contract, every unfulfilled promise, every unexplained transfer was meticulously recorded. The case was built not just on emotion, but on cold, hard evidence. And yet, even with documentation, the fight was daunting. How do ordinary citizens, veterans, no less, take on a royal couple? How do they confront a legal team backed by some of the most expensive and influential lawyers in the world? The answer was simple: persistence, public support, and a growing wave of outrage that the couple could not ignore. The veterans knew that timing was critical. The 2027 Invictus Games were approaching, and public attention would inevitably focus on Harry and Meghan's role in the event. If they delayed, obfuscated, or stonewalled, the stakes would only grow higher. The lawsuit became a race against time, a calculated effort to ensure that by the time the games arrived, accountability could no longer be ignored. But the plot thickened. Early in the investigation, one veteran stumbled across a document that should never have been seen. A financial spreadsheet, marked confidential, detailing the flow of funds from donors, sponsors, and charity initiatives. Some entries were expected: equipment purchases, event costs, but others were baffling. Large sums were allocated to vague categories with no clear beneficiary. One entry, labeled Strategic Initiative, listed a transfer directly to an entity associated with a company the couple had previously invested in personally. The revelation caused shockwaves among the veterans. Was this evidence of oversight? Of a mistake? Or was it something more deliberate? Lawyers knew they had a breakthrough. This document could be the cornerstone of the case, the proof that mismanagement wasn't accidental but potentially intentional.